Voice of Business podcast. I am Steve Cox, joined as always with my co-host Nick Smith. And Nick, we're back at our sponsor, podcastvideos.com. Like, I guess we didn't do such a bad job the last time we recorded that they let us come back, right?
Yeah, I think it was the fangirling we had at the beginning of the podcast in general that probably sold them on us. You know, the oohs and ahs that lasted for a
true,
solid,
but
like,
it is
3
a
minutes.
Fantastic setup, and this is just a temporary setup. It's only going to get better here in a few weeks when they get their permanent space. So we appreciate their sponsorship of the Voice of Business podcast and everything that they're doing to help us just kind of grow our audience and, you know, help us. The point of this podcast is to just get the message of the chamber out there, as well as just trying to reach a younger generation, because that's where you young folk are getting all your news and stuff. It's all about the pods, right?
All about the pods. You just aged yourself.
I know. And I say young folks like you're not like 4 years younger than me.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Well, what is our topic today, and who do we have joining us on the podcast today?
Sure thing. So today we are actually talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. We're going to go into all the details about that, but it's a huge event, obviously, for the United States, and we'll go over the reasons why here shortly. But we have two fantastic guests that you've actually heard before on this podcast. We're bringing them back. The SVP of Community Engagement and Inclusion, Geovanni Sarmiento, with the Rogers Lowell Chamber, and the newly promoted Community Engagement and Inclusion Manager, Meredith Alvarez, from the Rogers Lowell Chamber, is also here joining us. Both of them are here graciously joining us in this wonderful new space. I think they are just as happy as we are to not be upstairs in the heat and humidity of the old area.
Active construction zone right now.
Yeah, exactly. Something about, wanting to enjoy their time on set as opposed to sweat through it is something I think we really should be appreciative of. So thank you both for being here. We can't wait to get into the questions and go from there. First and foremost, our usual NWA in the news, conversations from the last couple of weeks. Springdale family is reopening longtime restaurant AQ Chicken House for those in Northwest Arkansas.
New location, though.
That's right. It is a new location, but they said essentially it's a staple. It needs to come back. So it was pretty exciting news, especially if you live in Springdale for that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it'll go back to Springdale for those folks that are excited for it, but not going to say we won't try to push for, another staple to be here in Rogers. The Chamber's Small Business Survey is live. Make sure you reach out to Steve or go to rogerslowell.com to take it today. We actually have a slider up as well as a bunch of information on our small business pages to talk about that small business survey. It's up. We're using it to gather intel on the state of business in our area, so please, we encourage you guys to go take a look at that. Leadership Benton County is accepting applications through October 20th, so be sure to apply to be a part of the 2024 class. And then also, one of the last things that I thought was kind of poignant that we had it today, per the latest economic reports, the Latino poverty rate has hit its lowest mark ever in Arkansas at 20.4% of Arkansas Hispanics living below the poverty line, compared to years past. When we look at years past, the Hispanic line has actually been a little bit higher than some of the other ones, and we're actually starting to see that gap even out just a little bit. So
that's good.
The numbers, that's right. Since the last time that number was reported last year, it's actually gone down almost 2 full percentage points. So it's pretty neat to actually see that, and we can get into the reasons why that's really important here in just a second. But first, I'm going to toss it back to you, Steve, to do our more in-depth Hispanic Heritage Month introduction.
Well, as you said, we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. It started in September, runs through October 15th, and so always good to just highlight, because the Hispanic community in Northwest Arkansas just plays such a vital role, not just in employment, but also just the businesses. My son's favorite restaurant is Mojitos, so we're there all the time. So it's always good, just the vital role that they play within our economy. But Hispanic Heritage Month, typically throughout the region, the Hispanic and Latino groups make up about 10% of the population. In Rogers, that's actually about 37%, so 1 in 3. In the school districts, we're now a majority school district here in the city of Rogers. So, we have a very large Hispanic population here. It's the fastest growing population segment nationally, and is projected to be a plurality of the population by 2050. So that's coming up, and that's going to be here sooner than you realize. Around, we'll be 1 million people by that point. So, which is great here in Northwest Arkansas. But while the poverty rate, as you mentioned, is decreasing, it is still on the higher end, but comparatively to other races within the nation. And if not addressed, the U.S. economy could be hurt in the next decade. So it's very important that we recognize and celebrate this community and provide as much support as we possibly can here. So As we said, there's roughly 37.4 million people of Mexican origin in the United States. It's represented nearly 60% of the nation's Hispanic population in 2022. But Hispanic is more than just Mexican. There's a lot of other cultures, a lot of other countries that identify as Hispanic. Geovanni, you are Ecuadorian. Right. So we had this conversation, offline earlier, just talking about that. So, Puerto Rican, the people in the Caribbean. So there's a large group of Hispanic population just around the globe in order for that. So 6 other Hispanic origin groups have reached over 1 million people in the United States: El Salvadorians, Cubans, Dominicans, Guatemalans, Colombians, and Hondurans. And in 2022, Spaniards accounted for nearly 1 million people in America as well. Venezuelan is the fastest growing group, and the U.S. Census officially recognizes 28 total people groups that are recognized in the Hispanic origin side. So lastly, just some quick facts. National Hispanic Heritage Month, celebrated September 15th to October 15th. It is celebrates the histories, cultures, contributions of American citizens whose ancestors are from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central and South America, as we said. It started in 1968 under President Lyndon Johnson with Hispanic Heritage Week. President Reagan in 1988 opened that up and expanded it to become Hispanic Heritage Month, which was signed into law August 17th of 1988. So those are some quick fun facts that I definitely didn't just now read. I totally knew all of those before.
We totally have cameras now, so you can't get away with that. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to cover in there. One of the biggest things that I wanted to really kind of talk about when I was researching this was just how much Hispanic heritage there is. You were talking about the fact that the U.S. Census Bureau talks about and records 28 different heritage groups that all fall under that Hispanic umbrella, but that especially in researching this, when you look at those 28 groups, there are so many other subgroups that as many as like 280 something subgroups and subcultures all exist under that one umbrella. And too often I feel like when this discussion comes up nationally, it's immediately people just think like Mexican. And so I think it's important, especially for our guests, to kind of talk a little bit more about where they're coming from when they view this and things like that. So as someone who is Hispanic and being from 2 different generations, so Gio, you've got the Gen X kind of perspective on things like this, and Meredith is actually coming from Gen Z or Millennial? Yep. Gen Z? Okay. So how do you view Hispanic Heritage Month? So Gio, let's start with you, and then we'll flip it over to Meredith here.
I'm just shocked you almost asked the lady her age live on camera.
That's why I stuck with generations there. I figured I was okay as long as it was a 2-decade span
there
that
you
I was
go.
allowed to talk about.
So with everything that has been said, I just want to say that all of us that, are bilingual, doesn't matter if it is English, Spanish or English, Portuguese, and many other languages that are spoken on the Caribbean islands, we all identified as Hispanic. And that's our pride and joy. When I talk about my kids, for example, I'm raising them with that part of my inheritance in my culture, right? And to identify as Hispanic children. So it's more than the pride, of course, right? It's our language, it's our culture. And that's where the difference start coming up, because specifically for me, being from Ecuador, right? There's different dishes, different food that we eat, and we consider all of those to be delicious. And that's our pride, right? But also the cultural representation with our traditional dances and things that we do that are a little different than things that are being done in Mexico or in Guatemala or El Salvador. So that's what makes every country unique, right? But the one thing that we all share is our heritage. And for us there down in South America, we come from our ancestors are the Incas, and that plays a huge role on who we are. And of course that was after the Hispanic colonization, mixed races. All of us have, in our lineage, native.
A lot of branching out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Spanish blood on us, right? So all of that plays a key role on who we are and what we are. For example, in Ecuador, we have different regions, and even in Ecuador, we're very competitive between the regions. And like here in the U.S., right? You have Texans making fun of people from Tennessee and things like that.
And everybody making fun of people from Texas.
So we have the same thing going on, right? And that's within one country. And then you have, because of political, sometimes even sports-related rivalries, that we start cheering for our home team, and especially in soccer, you see a lot going on. Where we hate our neighbors, not literally. I mean, it's just
how many emails are you going to get for calling it soccer? That's my question right now.
I was about to say something on that. Yeah.
So that's where all these things start playing. So for example, when Ecuador plays in the World Cup, and we have to eliminate each other with Peru, for example, that has been our rival from the minute the country Ecuador became a country. Peru has been our
your rival.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's where it plays like that way in sports and in economic growth and everything else. We're very competitive in comparing to the other countries, and that's the same thing that I see now that I have so many friends from Mexico, and Meredith can talk more about this, right? It's the same rivalry between Mexico and Guatemala and Salvador and all the Central American countries, right? Who has the more economic power, who has the better soccer team, who has the better this and that, right? The better beautiful beaches and all that stuff. So so we love to talk about that. We love to share our culture through the food, like I said in the beginning. That's another thing that Ecuadorians, Colombians, and Peruvians, we all think that we have the best ceviche, and then, but that's the opportunity that you have to go and explore and taste and make your own decision, right?
For sure.
I've been lucky to try all of them. And one is better than the other. I mean, it's
so who's the best ceviche is where we're going with it.
Well, I being Ecuadorian, I'll be shot to death in Ecuador if I don't say Ecuador has the best ceviche.
So we're okay.
He doesn't want to get one of those emails from his mom.
That's right. We're going to save you here real quick and toss it back over to Meredith. So Meredith, you have again, you're from the younger generation and have a completely different perspective when it comes to cultural upbringing and heritage and all that. So where do you sit in terms of like how you view the Hispanic Heritage Month and how you're talking with folks around it and things like that?
I would say I view it as a time to educate and celebrate. So we're celebrating our pride and our culture. And like we said, we're Hispanic. We're not all Mexican. So we all have a different culture. We have different foods. We have different dress codes. We have just a variety of different things. So I think that's something that we need to show everyone and make sure everyone knows to distinguish.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't know the difference between Latino and Hispanic. Mm-hmm. So I think, especially in my generation, I feel like people don't know, and they'll just all refer, like my friends.
Right.
Friends that aren't Hispanic, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, aren't you all Mexican? Like, no, we are not all Mexican. I was like, we're all Hispanic.
I was like, aren't you all French? Like, you're white, you have to be, right?
Yeah, so I just think it's important to educate others on that and tell them the difference.
How do you explain that to your friends? Like, do you have like in layman's terms? Because I know if we try to like throw out ceviche, half of them probably can't say it. So like, if you're trying to explain that to them, how do you?
I would say Latinos are people who are from Latin America, and then Hispanics are those people that speak Spanish. Essentially, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Put that on a card, just hand it to people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. And then so for the part of educating also, how I view it, I think it's nice seeing people that look like me in the community now. So I don't have to translate for my parents. Mm-hmm. They obviously can now have translators when they call to pay their bills or when they go to the medical office. I'm not like a 5-year-old. You'll see those memes like, oh yeah, remember when you would have to translate for your parents and you had no idea what the paper said. So you're like Googling everything. It's a joke, but it's seriously, we did have to do that.
That's a very real thing. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so it's nice that they have those resources now. And it's nice that they're, like you guys said previously, there's people studying and there's more jobs for bilingual people, and so I think that helps a lot.
How did your folks react like the first time that stuff started like really becoming mainstream, with folks picking up the Spanish translators at not just, stores or whatnot, but like you said, with the, call centers and folks in the city trying to help
banking.
out.
I remember at Arvest having to, have a translator a lot.
Oh yeah,
we had a
and now we
large
have
Hispanic population.
Bunko C that's opened up here in Rogers as well. Like, what do you remember? Like your folks reacting to that? I mean, was it?
I think
First time press 2 on the phone to get Spanish.
No, I think it makes them feel so much more comfortable because they actually can ask the questions they want to ask. Because I feel like sometimes when there's that language barrier, you don't know and you're too scared to ask. Like, what if they don't know, or it's going to take hours for them to find someone that can speak Spanish? So they would just stay quiet, and I think they feel much more comfortable now.
That's
Perfect.
great. And so this is an assumption, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming Spanish was what was spoken in your home, and you learned English like through school, or was it?
So Spanish was, when I was small, like toddler, let's say, I would know a couple of Spanish words. And so I did learn English in school, but I actually didn't want to learn Spanish.
Really?
Fun fact. So what ended up happening was when we would go to Mexico, I'd be like, how do I tell my grandma this? How do I tell her that? And my mom was like, I'm not going to tell you. Like, you're going to figure it out.
Okay. So
And
English was your main language in the house too.
I actually learned how to write it, speak it, and read it through Facebook because my mom opened a Facebook account so I could text my grandma.
Fascinating.
And then I actually ended up getting a 5 on my AP exam for Spanish. So I am completely fluent now.
I would
There
say
you
so.
go.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That is not something I would have expected.
Yeah.
Meta, you cannot pick that up as an approval of everything you're doing. I just want to throw that out there. One case study does not, benefit Meg. But no, that's fascinating. I love that. So when you look at the month of Hispanic Heritage Month, we want to talk about stories like that as much as possible, because I think it really is important for folks to realize just how much different cultures and subgroups appreciate mutual adoption of different things, right? So a lot of the commentary that you hear about from folks who, if you immigrate here, we want you to absorb into the culture and this, that, and the other. I think Hispanic Heritage Month highlighting stuff like that, where it's a mutual understanding and a mutual benefit, will benefit us in the long run. When you look at things like, again, the plurality of population that's going to be Hispanic and Spanish speaking, when we're talking about like economic development and things like that, that's a massive economic driver. And if you don't adopt those kinds of policies, we're not going to be able to continue doing business. You're going to see on a national scale, I mean, if you have 40+% of your population not engaged economically, it's going to impact things, right? That's where I think stories like that really do kind of bring it on home, right? You've got these folks who have come here, they're doing fantastic stuff. You've got their kids are learning through Facebook of all places how to speak different languages. That's the kind of stuff I think people really don't realize when it comes to immigrants and other cultures adapting to living here. And it's just fascinating to me. I love that.
Yeah. So just talking about that, right? Then you can start seeing how important it is to have the representation. Starting from, from the federal level, we have the Hispanic Congressional Caucus. And they're doing a fantastic job representing the needs of the growing Hispanic community. But then when you look at locally what's happening here, we already have people that are being elected, people that are being put in positions of power. So, for example, I have great examples in the school district. We have Mr. Martinez, that is right now the principal, and then Dr. Hernandez, another principal at New Tech High School, and other people that are in the line to basically come after them. So there's a lot of progress being done, and the representation matters, right? I remember years ago when we started with the police department, trying to make sure that we have representation in the police force. And look how, after many years of working so hard, now we have that representation, and it has alleviated a lot of the tension, a lot of the things that were not working out. So all of that we have to celebrate, right? That's what this month is about. And I think more than ever, I have seen so many things in the community, so many people jumping on board to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. And there are festivals everywhere. Every community almost has their own version of their own festivals, and parties everywhere, and meetings and recognitions. And now even in the state, we had the first time ever that we had the Hispanic Latino Awards, and that was something that was celebrated across the board. Right?
Yeah,
and so all of those things, we have moved so far, and now we're getting our own space, or getting our own recognition for the contributions of great leaders in our community. But also, in turn, it turns into what Meredith was sharing, is, how everyday life people are feeling, how, their needs are being met. They don't have to go out of their way to try to understand, what I'm signing here. When I call someone, I know that someone's going to speak Spanish to me. So those things make a complete difference. And I invite anyone that is listening to this to continue doing the same thing and trying to change the ways that you see your community. As you see the community keeps growing, right? And we have a great example, Meredith. She's bilingual. English was her first language.
Thanks, Grandma.
Right?
Yes.
But she also speaks fluently in Spanish, right? And that makes her so much more valuable. And she can go into any organization, any company, and be able to flip either one of those, right? And use either one of those and connect at a much personal level with anyone that wants to connect with her. So that's the superpower that she has.
I think the important thing you said there was the getting to celebrate the accomplishments of that community and making it public. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just a solitary thing like internally. I mean, we're trying to make as many of these things public because it allows for the community to come together and collectively celebrate, right? So when we see folks who are getting those promotions and helping to bridge the gaps between generations, between different speaking groups and this, that, and the other, I think that's where you really find a lot of important steps being made, and that progress that really kind of gets cemented in is you see all of those steps being taken to bring all these folks together and celebrate it. And through who doesn't like a celebration, right? So you bring all the celebratory moments out, you get folks to buy into it that way. It's not a matter of folks getting one over on one another or anything like that. It's that collective rising tide raises all ships kind of thing, right? And the more we do those collective celebrations, the more I feel like you're going to see acceptance and public policies that are beneficial of everyone, and you bring in all of that extra just development and good vibes in general that will help kind of bring everything together. It's very important, I think, that we have those kinds of deals. So that's kind of where I'm leaning on this with the Hispanic Heritage Month overall celebration, is just making sure it's a celebration, right? Exactly. Like, it's not just here's some history about Venezuela. It's we're actually bringing in those things there without specifics like ceviche, but it's having those kinds of conversations, I think, is the really important aspect of it.
No, absolutely. And I think as well, I mean, Geovanni kind of touched on this earlier, talking about representation. And, I'm just curious, like Meredith, growing up, watching TV and, seeing things, obviously you have, the Spanish speaking channels, but you're starting to see more and more mainstream now where it's getting away from those stereotypes of a day laborer or, like a gangbanger, in LA or things like that. How important was that for you growing up to see people with your skin color, being portrayed positively in the media and on TV?
It was very important. And so actually, I grew up, so my sister's a journalist and my dad's really into the news, so all I would watch was Univision 24/7 because it was like the only Spanish-speaking thing on TV. And so it's nice that now we can all watch Netflix and it lets you choose a language. So yes, I can click Spanish and they'll understand. And like you said, actually watched a video the other day. I can't remember the actress's name, but she was talking about that, how when she first started her acting career, it was like, oh, you're like the pregnant gangbanger's wife or something.
Right. And
now you actually have chances to be like the main character in movies or the best friend, or like you have a good, what's it called? A good presentation. Like
right. Yeah. It's getting away from those just only negative stereotypes. That's all you see. Then it's like, hey, what's going on?
And there's a variety, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, especially if you go back to movies in the 60s and 70s, it was like the only Hispanic parts that were out there were Puerto Ricans. That was it. And then for a while in the 90s, it was just Mexican. it didn't matter what your nationality was. Like if you were a Hispanic actor, it was like, well, here's the part we got. You got the Puerto Rican or this guy, maybe a Cuban every now and then, and that was about it.
And it's always
Scarface with Al Pacino, an Italian guy playing a Cuban.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Now you've got all this extra representation to a point where, like, I'm a huge Marvel fan. The Spider-Verse movie that came out earlier this year, they have Miles and his mom speak Spanish, and they didn't translate it on screen. There was no subtitles, no captions or anything like that. And the directors implicitly said they did that to just be like, that's how they would be at home. And if you're just watching that conversation, there's no like subtitles that pop up at the bottom of it.
No.
Kids who speak Spanish or are growing up in that environment, their families are going to love that, especially since it wasn't like it was some Easter egg. It was a poignant moment between a mother and a son in the movie. That will allow you to react more authentically as an audience member if you're watching that than if you have captions that pop up underneath it. And you see that now popping up even more so, again, with that representation just really kind of hammering home the emotions that are there and things like that. And yeah, with Netflix, I think that's a whole nother dimension too, when you get the ability to just switch languages, and it's not just subtitles and captions, like it's actually voiceover that they've done on different movies and things. And it's so funny when you think back to, I remember when folks would complain if they tried to do something like that, and then, what was it, 2 years ago, one of the most popular things that was out was Squid Game, and the entire thing for English-speaking audiences was dubbed VO.
Right.
No one complained about that one bit. And so I just want to be like, double standards much here, guys.
Exactly. People don't realize, like, 10% of the world's population speaks English. 90% speak another language. So, it's you got. I know it's the national language of America. That's what we speak. But at the same time, we're a melting pot, and we have so many different nationalities. The largest of which is Hispanic and Spanish speaking. So, that's a thing.
Oh yeah.
But that's important because when you see people getting influenced by all the media, right? But you have powerful people speaking out and saying, if you dream it, you can achieve it, right? So you have people like Sofia Vergara doing the things that she's doing, and Jennifer Lopez, where she came from and where she's at now, and leading a multi-million-dollar organization with her brand.
I think of AOC in Congress,
and AOC in Congress,
being elected,
and Judge Sotomayor in the Supreme Court. So you see a lot of people that are leading the way in opening all these doors and being amazing role models for many people in our community. And I see the transformation because now that I had an opportunity to go to California, and I was seeing, what they've been, especially the poor neighborhoods, and what they've been influenced by. And that's not happening here in Northwest Arkansas. Since we are an entrepreneurial region, it was based on entrepreneurship, and we continue to think that way. I see the positive impact of all of these amazing leaders that are having in how people act and behave.
For sure. And that kind of transitioned into the next question. You talked about, the impact that they're having on the business community with y'all's role here within the chamber, specifically doing minority business outreach. And, the largest segment of that is Hispanic and Latino. How vital do you think that is? I mean, again, about 37% of our population in Rogers is Spanish speaking. So, why is it so important that we're able to celebrate this month and then have your roles specifically, as well as getting down even into the schools with getting that next gen leadership?
Yeah. So for me, it's very important to understand that, the little things that I have done to make our community better, to make sure that our voices are being heard, that we have representation. Because when I started this work and when I first moved to this region, I didn't see that. And basically there was no representation. There was not many people that spoke Spanish in different companies and services that we were using. So all of that made me think that, we need to do something. And I challenge everyone that's listening. When you don't like something, when you see something that it needs to be changed or done differently, take the ownership. Right? That's the only way that you're going to change it. Don't wait for someone. I hear a lot of Hispanic people say, no, someone has to do this. And
You hear a lot of white people say that too.
and I'm like, you're that someone. I mean, just use your power.
Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah.
But it has to be that way, right? And you have to take ownership. If you want this community to change and change for the better and create opportunities for all, you have to think that way. That's the only way that things are going to start changing the way that you want to see it. Right? Meredith, you have something to add?
I think in my role at the chamber, so I was at the front desk. I'm still there for right now, but just that when they walk in and they see a familiar face, I feel like you can see the relief on their face, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to try to translate this. And so they feel comfortable asking questions. And like, for example, a lot of the time they're wanting a business license, and to try to tell them and try to explain what the chamber is in English to them, they're going to be so confused. So for me, being able to tell them like, no, they're next door. This is what you can do. This is what you actually have to do. And then they're just like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, you actually understand what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah. So I think that plays a big role. And then also like answering the phones in Spanish. Katie said they used to have to go find Geovanni, hunt him down, or when someone walked in the door and they didn't know. So I think it's a good thing that I was able to help them. You're able to help the double amount of people that you would if you only spoke one language. So that really helps. And even like sometimes there's new students for like our scholarships, and they'll come in and they only have 1 year living here in Rogers, and their primary language is Spanish. So sometimes it's broken English, and you're just like, I can talk to you in Spanish if you need me to, and I can explain it. And so that always helps. So just throughout the whole community, not even at my job. And it's nice seeing like people my age that are now teachers, and they have familiar faces. Because I was explaining to Katie, like sometimes I think of stuff first in Spanish instead of English.
Yeah.
Or like she'll be like, do you know what this is? And I'll be like, I have no idea what that is. And she explains it to me. I was like, I knew what that was, but in Spanish.
Right.
And I was like, I had no idea that's what it was called in English. So I think just having someone that you can relate to, that looks like you, that speaks the same language as you, helps a lot in the community.
Well, as you know, the LEAD program specifically, which is a leadership development program geared towards, it's open for everybody, but geared towards minority students within the high schools. How important is it for them to have somebody that can speak Spanish, that looks, you know, that has that Hispanic and Latino background, to be able to show like, okay, turn it into a role model? I mean, Meredith, you're going to have kids looking up to you, be like, oh, I can do that. You know, like what does that feel like?
And I think it helps that Gen Z, and so I feel like also the age and the fact that I'm Hispanic helps him out. Like she looks like me, she's around my age, like I can also do it, like you said.
Yeah, she was sitting in this chair 4 years ago, or
and
you know, whatever it was.
That makes them more comfortable, and I really,
well, and I'm sure
really wish that I had that.
I'm sure there's terminology too that you're going to know. That, no offense, Gio, but you know, you're not the TikToking type in the office, so I think it helps to have someone.
Gio does salsa dancing. He doesn't do TikTok dancing. That's
right. Having someone who understands, you know, younger lingo and kind of where they're coming from is probably really imperative as we're trying to develop, like you said, the next generation of leaders. You know, if you're trying to actively engage with those 16-year-olds, I just always go back to that Steve Buscemi meme of
hello, fellow children.
Hello, fellow young person. You know, that's what we have with Gio. Like, we put the boombox over his head. Like, yeah, I've got this. We're good.
So the difference that I see is when you look at the participants and they see that there's someone that is trying to help improve their lives, right? Because usually that's what happens when people take the LEAD program very seriously. I think the engagement happens. For them, it's very easy to understand now that we're genuine, that we're here to help them, that we're here to connect them with all the resources that they can possibly need. And the level of engagement increases because now they bought it. They're like, okay, you're not here just telling me what I should do, but you're actually helping me get there.
The intentionality behind it, yeah.
Right. So that's why we had these record numbers of participation and engagement and people actually after they graduate. You know, I run into some of the students already that graduated in a Walmart or somewhere. And they approach me and they're like, remember me? I was in the LEAD program. I'm like, yeah, I do. And then they start telling me what they're doing. It's fascinating. I mean, they're like, you know, I'm doing all of these things and you actually you were talking the truth. So
You're welcome.
but that's the thing is it's not about us. It's about their success, and I will never be tired to hear those stories and to continue helping them, because as they keep growing, they have their needs change, and they need to be connected with XYZ company, and if we can open those doors, we will. That's what servant leadership is about.
For sure. As we come to a close, I want to ask one last question real quick. With y'all's position within the chamber, how does your Hispanic heritage play into your roles, as well as your work with members of the community and business in NWA? And I'd also like to just add an addendum to that. Both of you have kids. How did that play into your Hispanic heritage? How did that play into how you brought them up, especially in or are bringing them up in Northwest Arkansas? And just what kind of stuff do you address, I guess, with them when it comes to their heritage?
So to me, it's very important for them to understand that we live in a community, and they have to be part of the community. And there are things like any other community, right? We can't claim that we're perfect. There are things that are challenging, and there are things that they're seeing that probably they won't like. But how you react to that is very important, right? If you're gonna get frustrated and just stop at that and don't try to make any change, then we don't advance, right? So that's the most important message that I have for my kids is if you don't like something, say something and try to change it. Right.
Somebody should fix this.
And in my lifetime, that's basically what I have done. That has gotten me into some trouble as well. For
good trouble,
speaking
though.
too much.
Good trouble.
But that's the thing is lead by example. Our kids are very important, right? I have a lot of parents also that are asking me for advice because their kids are probably not focusing on what they should be focusing on, and that's the first thing that I tell them is like, okay, tell me about yourself. How are you showing your kid the way? And start reflecting about what's happening in that dynamic at home, because I'm a true believer that the education system is there for a purpose, and we have a great education system in our region, and we should be very thankful for that. But our morals and our ethics, that comes from home. I mean, that ultimately those parents are responsible for how the kids are going to behave in society. So that's the number one thing is focus on your family, be the example, and do the things that you want your kids to do, and then they will learn, right? Of course, it's a lot more difficult for some families because they're here, first-time immigrants. They have to work. I mean, sometimes they work overtime or they even pick up a second job because they have to provide for the family, and I don't blame them. They have to do what they have to do. When you look at those poverty rates, right? People want to come out of that, and they have to do what they have to do. But at the same time, don't forget about your family. What's the most important thing?
For sure. Meredith, what about you?
So going back to what Joe was saying, also, while listening to him, he sounded just like my dad. So, just what my dad would tell me. So, I'm going to talk about the impact that my parents had on me and the impact that I want to have on my son. So, I think growing up, I would always get home from school and I would just start ranting to them and being like, this happened at school and I can't believe that they didn't do this, they didn't do that. And then he's like, why don't you speak up? You have that advantage that we don't have. Like, speak up, tell them what needs to be done, how you guys can work together and figure something out. Like, you have that advantage. And so I really like that he would always tell us that. And I'm still a quiet person, but I will speak up now if I don't like something. So I think that had a big impact in me. And I feel like I want to have that same impact on my son. But also being first generation, I feel like I'm teaching my son Spanish, primarily Spanish. And when he gets to school, he's going to have to learn English. Yeah. It'll happen. And so that way he'll be bilingual. Like I said, he'll be able to reach the same twice as much people as someone that can only speak English. But also I'm really happy that I'll be able to help him with his homework and show him how to read and write until we'll be taught math the same way. And so he'll have a resource and someone to look up to. And so I think that helps a lot because especially once you're applying to colleges, you're like, what the heck is going on? Like, I have no idea.
I have to write an essay about
I'm
me?
doing
What?
this all wrong. And so I don't have someone to like read my papers. I would always have to go to my English teachers and be like, is this right? And sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, I am annoying them. And they're like, no, don't feel like that. So just knowing that he'll have someone to look up to and ask questions to, and not just me, but like my whole family. Like we all grew up here. And so that's nice that he'll have people to look up to.
Only comment I want to add is something that I think is really poignant from both of you, is you both are talking about how in different ways you recognize there were holes, there were gaps in ways that you can address certain things. And Gio, it was with the lack of outreach to the Hispanic community in general. And now you're in a job that you're literally like the stopgap for that in a lot of ways. I know that a lot of the Spanish-speaking business owners and whatnot with the chamber, the only reason that they have signed up and been so active is because of your position. So that wouldn't have happened without you. From the same perspective, Meredith, when you look at everything that you're doing, both from what your folks taught you and then now you're taking everything they taught you and adapting your own upbringing in how you're bringing up the next generation, your kid's going to be balling when he gets into like, high school and just specifically what you just said there, being able to help with homework and being able to bridge that gap. You're the generation that is coming from like the first time immigrants, like you were talking about, but you're stepping into that and you're owning it and you're making sure that you carry forward just like the generations before you did, bringing all of that heritage with them. Both of those things I think are just fantastic to highlight that it's not resting on your laurels. Right. And I think, again, we need to celebrate the fact that you all are busting your butts to make all of this stuff happen and look as seamlessly effortless at times when it really is hard work to fill those holes. It's just phenomenal. And I can't thank you both enough for just being the awesome people that you are and the great parents that you are and outstanding representatives of that Hispanic community. So seriously, thank you guys for everything that you're doing. Thank you both for being here today to educate Steve and I on this stuff.
I learn so much every podcast. Like it's fascinating. So it's awesome.
Well, and now that we have cameras, we really cannot hide the fact that
true.
We're about as pasty pale white guy as can get. So we really need to make sure that we bring in two very wonderful examples of Hispanic heritage to help us out.
Yes, and the big thing I learned today is that Geovanni's mom makes the best ceviche in the world. So that's the only thing. So.
Yeah. We're going to take that clip. We're going to post it out there. You'll be fine, buddy. We'll get you taken care of. But yes, well, Steve, I'll toss it back to you before doing our full official final closing. But again, just want to thank you both for being here. And yeah, Steve?
Absolutely. Thank you guys. And the work that you all do. I mean, you're, not just the outreach within the Hispanic business community, but also down into the school work. I mean, you are bringing about generational change and you are providing those kids with opportunities that they might have never had. And so it's just, it's great. It's fantastic and absolutely love the work that you do. Meredith, you got some big shoes to fill, as Mariana did a really good job in that role. But I think it's a goal of the chamber every time we fill a position is we try to make it better or try to hire someone that is a step up from where we are. And I think you're gonna grow into this role and just absolutely crush it. I mean, you've been doing a great job already. Haven't even officially started yet, but no, I have no doubt in my mind that you're just going to take that position to a whole nother level. And so we're very happy for the opportunity. I remember when the position knew that it was Mariana was going to have to leave, and I went to Geovanni. He's like, have you thought about Meredith for this role? Yeah. I went to Katie. I mean, we were all over like she would be great for it. So really congratulations on the promotion, and just know you're going to absolutely crush the new role when you get officially started here in a couple weeks. But thank you to podcastvideos.com for sponsoring the episode. I know I'm done giving you a hard time, Nick. I'm done doing it.
We're going to have more and more folks, I think, who want to actively be a part of the podcast now when they see that it actually looks nice.
And this is just a temporary space. So once they get the new building, it's going to be just a whole new level. We're absolutely so excited about it. So if you have a podcast and want to take it to a new level, if you're thinking about starting the podcast, definitely reach out, podcastvideos.com. They can help you. I mean, we haven't touched a button today. Like, it's fascinating. Like, we just walk in ready to go. It's just fantastic. So definitely,
it's only going to get bigger and better from here.
Exactly.
They've got a great studio space coming in.
We're plugging them hardcore because they do such a fantastic job.
I feel like I'm in a professional recording studio.
This is a professional recording studio.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting my feelings hurt a little bit about how we had this set up
We're going to have to, when we get the new building, when we get our studio back, we're going to have to really step up our games. So.
Yeah, I'm already waiting for the We're going to have Gio, who's just going to be blunt and be like, why are we here?
Yeah, let's go back.
Yeah, I'm not cool with this. Well, yes, definitely want to thank Podcast Videos for everything that they've been doing for us. I also want to thank you all for listening. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share via SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, Amazon, all the social medias. We'll be pushing this stuff out as best as we can. Our next episode is going to be on Chamber Appreciation, which we're going to have a couple of special guests on that one, as October 18th, I believe, is Chamber Appreciation Day.
Yes.
So we're looking at that. Thank you again to Geovanni Sarmiento, SVP of Community Engagement and Inclusion with the Rogers Lowell Chamber, as well as Meredith Alvarez, the newly appointed Community Engagement and Inclusion Manager with the Rogers Lowell Chamber, for being here. We really couldn't have done this show without you all. Thank you so much. That's all we've got for this week. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
You'll hear us next time.